The emergency transmission crackled through Commander Elena Torres' neural implant at 040 hours, dragging her from uneasy sleep. She bolted upright in her quarters aboard the carrier Defiance, heart already racing before her conscious mind processed the words. The Galactic Council had issued its directive. 3,000 Xaltheen prisoners now held in the lower detention sectors were to be executed immediately. No trial, no delay. Standard protocol for captured enemy combatants. Elena's hands trembled as she pulled on her uniform, fingers fumbling with clasps she'd fastened 1,000 times before. Through the viewport, she could see the distant lights of her fleet hanging in the void around Sigma Outpost 7. 23 human vessels that had somehow survived yesterday's brutal engagement. They'd won. If winning meant watching 16 of your ships turn to expanding clouds of debris while you broadcast surrender terms to an enemy fleet that was already breaking apart. The Xaltheen had believed her. That was the part that made her throat tight. When she'd transmitted the offer across all frequencies, promising safety and humane treatment in exchange for immediate stand-down, she'd expected them to fight to the last soldier, like every species did in galactic conflicts. Instead, their remaining cruisers had gone dark, powered down weapons, and transmitted coordinates for boarding. 3,000 warriors had laid down their arms because a human commander gave her word. Now the Council wanted them dead. Elena reached the command deck to find her executive officer, Lieutenant Marcus Webb, already reviewing the execution order, his dark face grim in the blue glow of tactical displays. He looked up as she approached, and she saw the same sick conflict in his eyes that churned in her gut. "They're serious," he said quietly. The Vorkathian ambassador personally signed off. So did the Drellian Compact representative. "They're saying if we don't comply within 6 hours, Earth's alliance status will be reviewed." "Reviewed," Elena repeated, the word tasting like ash. "That's diplomat speak for revoked." "Yes, ma'am." Webb pulled up a secondary screen, scrolling through historical precedent files. "I've been checking the archives. In 4,000 years of recorded galactic conflict, there's not a single instance of a species honoring surrender terms. Captured soldiers are always executed immediately. It's considered a mercy, actually. Quick death, instead of whatever torture enemies might devise." Elena moved to the viewport, staring out at the debris field, where so many had died just hours ago. Somewhere in that expanding graveyard of metal and frozen bodies were the remains of Captain Rachel Kim, who'd commanded the destroyer Perseverance. Rachel, who'd grown up 3 blocks from Elena in Detroit, who'd been her roommate at the academy, who transmitted a final message of defiance even as her ship's hull breached and the void claimed her. They'd all died for something. It had to be for something. "Get me a secure channel to the detention sectors," Elena said. "I want to see them." Webb's hesitation lasted only a second. "Yes, ma'am." The holographic display shifted, showing the cavernous detention bay where the Xaltheen prisoners were held. They were massive creatures. These soldiers of the Empire that had burned its way across 18 star systems in the past decade. Each stood nearly 8 feet tall, their scaled hides varying in shades from deep emerald to pale jade. Forearms ending in clawed hands that could tear through steel plating. Their faces were angular, alien, with large golden eyes that reflected light like a cat's. They sat in orderly rows, monitored by automated defense systems and a handful of human marines who looked tiny by comparison. Most of the Xaltheen were wounded, bandages wrapped around various limbs, medical scanners attached to those in critical condition. The medical bay had worked through the night, saving as many as they could. Elena had given specific orders. "Treat them like you'd want our people treated." One of the Xaltheen near the front raised its head, golden eyes finding the camera as if it could see her watching. Its mandibles clicked in what the translation software interpreted as a question, though the words didn't come through clearly. "They keep asking when we're going to kill them," Webb said softly. "The translation crews say they don't understand why we're feeding them, treating their wounded." One of them said, "It must be some kind of human psychological torture." They've never seen mercy before, Elena realized, the words coming out barely above a whisper. "Not once in their entire civilization. Surrender means death, so nobody ever surrenders. Every battle is to extinction. That's how galactic war works, Commander. has worked for millennia. Elena turned from the viewport, facing her executive officer with a clarity that cut through the exhaustion and grief. Then it's time it worked differently. Webb's eyes widened. Commander, if you refuse this order, I gave my word, Marcus. When I broadcast those terms, I spoke for humanity. I said if they surrendered, we would treat them with dignity and respect. I said we were different. Her voice strengthened, the decision settling into her bones like cold iron. If we execute them now, we prove we're no different than every other species out here. We prove our word means nothing. They'll court-martial you, probably execute you for treason. Maybe. Elena pulled up the communication interface, her fingers steady now, but I'd rather die knowing I kept my promise than live knowing I became the monster we're supposedly fighting against. Commander, I need you with me on this, Marcus. I need my senior staff with me. But if you can't be, I understand. You can note your objection in the log. Webb stared at her for a long moment, something shifting behind his eyes. Then he straightened, shoulders back, chin up. I'm with you, ma'am. All the way. The next 3 hours were a storm of transmissions. Elena sent her refusal to the Galactic Council, citing humanity's commitment to honoring agreements and treating prisoners with dignity, as outlined in Earth's own military code. She expected fury. She got something far worse. Silence. Then, at hour 4, the responses began flooding in. The Vorkathian ambassador called her decision a dangerous precedent that would destabilize millennia of established warfare protocols. The Drellian Compact threatened immediate withdrawal of their fleet support. 3 human admirals sent encrypted messages ranging from supportive to viciously condemning. Senator Patricia Howell, chair of Earth's Defense Committee, transmitted a public statement calling Elena's actions a betrayal of every human who died fighting the Xaltheen. The division spread through her own fleet. 2 ship captains requested immediate transfer. 1 destroyer, the Valiant, actually powered up weapons and demanded Elena stand down or face consequences. Webb handled the crisis with calm efficiency, reassigning personnel, isolating potential mutineers, and keeping the fleet from tearing itself apart. Through it all, the Xaltheen prisoners sat in their detention bay, watching and waiting for the death they'd been promised by their own culture. At hour 5, a new transmission arrived on a heavily encrypted channel. The source was listed as unknown, but the relay path suggested it came from deep inside Xaltheen space. Elena almost deleted it as a potential cyber attack, but something made her hesitate. She opened the file. A Xaltheen face filled her screen, but this one was adorned with the complex geometric scarring that marked military rank. The translation software identified the pattern as equivalent to a 3-star general. The creature's golden eyes stared directly into the camera, with an intelligence that made Elena's breath catch. Commander Torres? The voice came through with surprising clarity, the translation nearly seamless. I am General Krath of the 73rd Deep Range Fleet. I am transmitting this message at considerable personal risk. Elena leaned closer to the screen. One of your prisoners managed to send a brief coded message through salvaged equipment before your security teams confiscated it. The message reached certain circles within our military structure. It spoke of medical treatment, of food provided, of being addressed with respect. Krath's mandibles clicked in what might have been disbelief. For 3 cycles, I have studied humanity. I have read your transmissions, analyzed your tactics, examined your cultural broadcasts. My commanders called you savage beasts, worthy only of extermination. But this message, Commander Torres, suggests something I never thought possible. The general paused, and Elena saw something in those alien eyes she recognized. Doubt, hope, fear. If what my soldiers say is true, if you have truly honored your surrender terms, then everything I have been taught about the nature of warfare is a lie. And if it is a lie, then perhaps there is another way. The transmission ended abruptly. Elena sat back, her mind racing. Beck, she played it again, analyzing every word, every inflection the translation software captured. Then she forwarded it to Webb with a single word attached. Thoughts? His response came within minutes. Could be a trap. Could be psychological warfare. Could also be exactly what it appears to be. The real question is, what do we do with it? What indeed? At hour 5 and 47 minutes, 13 minutes before the Council's deadline, Elena recorded her final response. She kept it simple, direct, and sent it on every frequency. This is Commander Elena Torres of the Earth Defense Fleet. I have received the Galactic Council's order regarding the Xaltheen prisoners, currently in our custody. I respectfully decline to carry out this order. These soldiers surrendered under terms I personally offered. They believed the word of a human commander. I will not prove them fools for that belief. I will not teach the galaxy that humanity's promises are worthless. If this decision costs me my career, my freedom, or my life, so be it. Some things are worth more than survival. Honor is one of them. The response was immediate and catastrophic. The Vorkathian ambassador formally withdrew his species' support, recalling their fleet assets from human-controlled space. The Drellian Compact followed within the hour. 2 minor allied species who'd been considering closer ties with Earth issued statements distancing themselves from human military doctrine. On Earth itself, protests erupted outside government buildings, with citizens divided between those who saw Elena as a hero and those who viewed her as a traitor who doomed humanity to isolation. Her own government remained ominously silent. In the detention bay, the Xaltheen prisoners had stopped asking when they would die. Instead, they watched the human guards with expressions that the translation software struggled to interpret. Confusion, maybe. Or the first stirrings of something the Xaltheen language apparently had no word for. 3 days passed. Elena waited for the arrest order, for a fleet to arrive and strip her of command. Instead, she got something she didn't expect. Intelligence reports began filtering in from deep space monitoring stations. Unusual movements within Xaltheen military formations. Communications intercepts suggesting internal disputes. Nothing concrete, nothing definitive, but enough to suggest turbulence within the typically rigid Imperial command structure. Then, on day 4, her long-range scanners detected an incoming fleet, not human. Not any of their former allies, Xaltheen. 47 warships, including 6 of their massive dreadnoughts, dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system and burning hard toward Sigma Outpost 7. It was over. They'd come to finish what the last battle started. To rescue their prisoners and destroy the human fleet that had dared show them mercy. Elena gave the order to prepare for combat, knowing it was hopeless. Her 23 ships against 47, many of them still damaged from the previous engagement. They'd fight anyway. They'd fight because that's what humans did. But as the Xaltheen fleet closed to weapons range, something impossible happened. They didn't fire. Instead, a transmission came through, and Elena's hands went numb when she saw the face on her screen. General Krath, live and in command of the lead dreadnought. Commander Torres, I am requesting permission to enter your defensive perimeter. Elena couldn't speak. Webb stood frozen beside her. The entire command deck had gone silent. I have brought 12 battleships and 40,000 soldiers who have chosen to stand with me, Croft continued. We have spent 4 days reviewing every scrap of intelligence regarding your treatment of our captured comrades. We have read their testimony. We have seen the medical scans. We have confirmed that not only did you honor your word, but you treated our people better than our own empire treats its wounded. The general's golden eyes seemed to burn with intensity. The Xaltheen Empire has lied to us, Commander. They told us surrender meant torture and slow death at enemy hands, that fighting to extinction was the only honorable path. But you have shown us a different truth. You have proven that honor can exist between enemies, that mercy is not weakness. And if this can be true, then perhaps the war we have been fighting, the cause we have bled for, is not as righteous as we were taught to believe. Elena found her voice. General Krath, are you saying? I am saying that I defect, Commander Torres. I and those who follow me, we will stand with humanity. Not because we believe your cause is just. We do not yet understand your causes. But because you kept your word to soldiers who had been taught that words mean nothing. Because you showed mercy in a galaxy that has forgotten the concept. And because if we must die in this war, I would rather die fighting alongside those who honor their promises than serving those who view us as expendable assets. The implications crashed over Elena like a physical wave. 40,000 Xaltheen soldiers, 12 battleships. All because she'd refused to execute prisoners. Your fleet is badly damaged, Kraft continued, and I have intelligence that suggests the Empire is preparing a major offensive against this sector. They know you are isolated now, cut off from your allies. They plan to destroy you utterly and use the victory as propaganda to reunite our fractured military structure. But if you will have us, we will stand with you against them. Elena looked at Webb, saw the shock and hope warring in his expression. She thought of the 3,000 prisoners in her detention bay, who'd believed a promise when every fiber of their cultural conditioning told them not to. She thought of Rachel Kim and all the others who died believing humanity stood for something better. "General Krath," she said, her voice steady despite the emotions threatening to overwhelm her. "You and your people are welcome here, and I promise you the same thing I promised those who surrendered. You will be treated with dignity and respect. Your word will be honored, and so will ours. Then we have an alliance, Commander Torres. May it be the first of many." The next 72 hours transformed Sigma Outpost 7 from an isolated defensive position into something unprecedented in galactic history. Human and Xaltheen engineers worked side by side to repair damaged ships, sharing technical knowledge that neither species had dreamed of exchanging. Medical teams collaborated to treat wounded from both sides, learning alien biology in real time. And in 1,000 small interactions, old enemies discovered they could communicate, cooperate, and even understand one another. The prisoners in the detention bay were released and given the choice to return to the Empire under neutral transport or join Kraft's defectors. 200 chose to leave. The remaining 2,800 stayed, many citing the same reason. They wanted to fight for commanders who kept their promises. But the real impact of Elena's decision rippled far beyond Sigma Outpost 7. News of Krath's defection spread through the Xaltheen military like wildfire. Encrypted transmissions flooded secured channels, soldiers questioning their commanders about why the humans had spared prisoners when their own empire would have executed them without hesitation. 3 more generals sent secret communications to Elena, not yet ready to defect, but expressing doubt about the war's true purpose. The fractures were spreading. Then came the assault Elena had been warned about. The Empire dispatched 83 warships, their largest offensive force in 2 years, intent on crushing the human Xaltheen alliance before it could inspire further defections. They arrived expecting to find a weakened human fleet and a handful of traitors. Instead, they found 35 combined human and Xaltheen vessels with integrated battle tactics and crews who'd learned to fight as one. The battle lasted 9 hours and resulted in the near-total destruction of the Imperial assault force. But more significantly, it resulted in something else. During the height of combat, 17 Xaltheen ships in the Imperial fleet ceased fire. Their commanders transmitted the same message Elena had sent weeks before, a request for honorable surrender with guaranteed humane treatment. Elena granted it without hesitation, and General Krath personally vouched for her word. When the surviving Imperial ships limped back to Xaltheen space, they carried something more dangerous than battle damage. They carried doubt. They carried questions. They carried the knowledge that there was an alternative to the brutal calculus that had governed galactic warfare for 4,000 years. The Galactic Council watched in stunned silence as the unthinkable unfolded. Species that had fought to mutual extinction for millennia suddenly had a third option: surrender with honor, mercy for those who laid down arms. The concept spread like a virus through military networks across known space. 3 months after Elena's refusal to execute prisoners, the Xaltheen Empire was in chaos. 40% of their fleet had defected or refused orders. Soldiers demanded to know why their leaders treated captured enemies better than the Empire treated its own wounded. The rigid command structure that had held the Empire together for centuries cracked under the weight of a simple truth: honor mattered more than victory, at any cost. The war didn't end overnight. There were still hardliners who fought on, still commanders who executed their own soldiers rather than allowed defection. But the tide had turned in a way no military strategist had predicted, and it had all started with one human commander who refused to break her word. Elena stood on the observation deck of the newly christened Sigma Alliance station, watching construction crews expand the facility to accommodate the thousands of humans in Xaltheen now working together. Beside her, General Krath reviewed tactical displays, his forearms moving with practiced efficiency as he coordinated with both species' military protocols. The Council has requested a formal meeting, Krath said without looking up. They wish to discuss new frameworks for prisoner treatment and surrender terms. Elena smiled slightly. The same council that had threatened to abandon humanity now wanted to learn from them. What do you think they'll propose? Nothing that goes far enough, Krath replied. They will make minor adjustments, claim credit for innovation, and pretend they always supported such measures. Politicians are the same in every species. Probably true. Elena watched a Xaltheen engineer and a human technician argue animatedly over the proper way to integrate their different power systems. 3 months ago, they would have been trying to kill each other. Now they were arguing about conduit placement. Your species has changed the galaxy, Commander Torres, Krath said quietly. Not through superior weapons or brilliant tactics, but through the simple act of keeping your word. The ripples of this will extend for generations. It wasn't just me, Elena countered. It was everyone who chose to stand with that decision. Marcus Webb. The medical teams who treated your wounded. The Marines who guarded prisoners with respect. Even the ship captains who disagreed but followed orders anyway. And it was your people, General. The soldiers who believed a promise when everything they knew said not to. Krath's mandibles clicked in what Elena had learned was amusement. In our language, we have 17 words for types of victory. But until 3 months ago, we had no word for mercy. We've had to borrow yours. The translators are struggling with the concept. Language shapes thought, Elena mused. If you have no word for something, it's hard to conceive of the possibility. Yes, which is why I have ordered all defector ships to teach human languages to our crews. Not just for translation purposes, but because your words contain concepts we need to learn. Mercy, compassion, honor that extends beyond combat prowess. He finally looked up from his displays, golden eyes meeting hers. These are weapons more powerful than any we possessed. Alert chimed on Elena's communicator. She checked it, and felt her heart rate spike. The Terran Senate has issued their ruling on my court-martial. Krath went very still. And? Elena read the message twice to make sure she understood it correctly. Then she started laughing. The sound edged with relief and exhaustion and a giddy sort of disbelief. Charges dismissed with honors. They're promoting me to Admiral and giving me command of the entire Sigma Alliance fleet. She scrolled down. They're also formally adopting my prisoner treatment protocols as official Earth military doctrine. Every soldier in the human fleet will be required to honor surrender terms and treat captives humanely. Your government has learned quickly. They've learned what works. Elena closed the communicator and turned back to the viewport. Somewhere out there, the Xaltheen Empire was tearing itself apart, and new alliances were forming from the wreckage. The galaxy was changing, restructuring itself around a principle so simple it seemed absurd that it had taken this long to discover. Keep your promises. Honor your word. Treat even enemies with dignity. Revolutionary ideas, forged in the crucible of war and tempered by the courage to choose mercy over expedience. General Krath, Elena said, how many more of your people do you think will join us? Thousands, if the current trends continue. Perhaps hundreds of thousands within a year. The Empire is fracturing, and many of my people are searching for something better to believe in. And what do you believe in now? Krath was quiet for a long moment, watching the same construction crews Elena observed. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight that transcended translation. I believe that a human commander gave her word and kept it, even when it cost her everything. I believe that mercy is not weakness, but the highest form of strength. And I believe that your species, for all your flaws in youth, has something to teach a galaxy that has forgotten how to be anything other than brutal. He turned to face her fully, standing in what Elena recognized as a formal position of respect. I believe, Admiral Torres, that humanity's greatest weapon is not your firepower, or your tactics, or your stubborn refusal to surrender. It is your seemingly infinite capacity to choose compassion even when cruelty would be easier. That is what'll reshape the galaxy. That is what'll end wars that have raged for millennia. Not through conquest, but through the radical act of keeping your word and showing your enemies that there is another way. Elena felt the weight of his words settle over her shoulders along with the new rank she'd just received. Thousands of lives now depended on her decisions. Thousands more would join this alliance, seeking refuge from empires that viewed them as expendable. The responsibility was staggering, but it was also right. "Then let's make sure we're worthy of that belief," she said. "Let's build something better than what came before. An alliance based on honor, where words have meaning and mercy isn't seen as weakness. It won't be easy." "Nothing worthwhile ever is," Krath replied. Through the viewport, another ship arrived, its transponder identifying it as a Xaltheen frigate from a previously neutral fleet. The captain transmitted the same message. Elena had heard dozens of times now. A request to join the alliance, to fight for commanders who kept their promises. Elena approved the request without hesitation. Her word as binding as it had been that first terrible night when she'd refused to execute prisoners and change the course of galactic history. The galaxy was learning, slowly and painfully, that humanity's mercy was not a weakness to exploit, but a strength to fear. Because once you showed soldiers there was an alternative to dying for empires that saw them as expendable assets, once you proved that honor could exist between enemies and promises could be kept even in war, there was no going back. The old order was crumbling, and in its place, something new was rising. Something built on the revolutionary foundation that a human queen of war had defended with her career, her freedom and her life. The simple radical truth that your word should mean something, and that mercy given costs nothing but creates value beyond measure. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy. That was how a single act of compassion became a weapon powerful enough to fracture empires and reshape the fundamental nature of conflict itself. And as Elena watched another former enemy join their growing alliance, she understood that this was only the beginning. The real work. Building a galaxy where honor mattered more than victory, where mercy was strength, and where keeping your word meant everything. That work would take generations. But it had started with 3,000 prisoners who believed a promise when everything they knew said not to. And it would change